freeways throughout the state. Not surprisingly, many of these go directly through the darkest, most populous regions. And finally, these yellow dots represent our proposed demand hub locations based on those factors. So we then wanted to determine aggregation hub locations. And this map depicts average farm size by county, with the darkest counties having the smallest average farm size because we're targeting small farms. We also thought that it was important to look at the number of farms. And here the ones with the highest number of farms are in the darkest green. San Diego just wins for everything. It's amazing. So we thought that by looking at number of farms as well, that this might exclude some of the very large industrial farms from the selection in the study. And then we also wanted to look at freeways, so we're including these in the study too. And finally, with these three factors, number of farms, size of farms, and access to freeways, we did a suitability analysis. I'm all over the place. Which is represented right here. And the darkest areas in this are weighing those three factors and then showing where the optimal locations would be. And we've depicted those with the smaller green dots right there. And so next we have, these are all of the proposed regional food hub locations. So this includes the demand hubs as well as the aggregation hubs. So these are all of the proposed ones. And finally, this is our vision, this is our product. We have the proposed hubs along with plotted hubs that we know of, people within our advisory council or that are extended. So some things to note about this study. Many of the regional food hubs actually line up with the study's findings. These are the ones that have the bigger green dot with the little orange dot in the middle. It also shows that the Central Valley is a very prime location for regional food hubs, and the network thus far has a very big gap there. And so the takeaway from that, I think, would be to really focus outreach efforts in those areas. Also, you notice that some of the existing regional food hubs are outside of the study area, and this does not mean that they shouldn't exist. Instead, we think that this speaks to the abundance and potential to expand and connect the state's regional food hubs. And also, just sort of as a side, it should be noted that this study is not perfect. It's a first attempt at visualizing the network, and in our implementation plan, we're actually suggesting that a follow-up study be done that goes into greater depth and deals with some more precise factors that kind of breaks it down. This is really just a starting point to start to think about kind of methodology for going about tackling such a big thing.
Sharon, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
The very first thing that jumped out at me is almost like if you're focusing on LA and you had nothing on the Central Coast, we already have that. You know, because you show the emerging, which I'm sure is Ventura and Santa Barbara, and then San Luis Obispo, so you have a big representation of the Central Coast right here in this room, and yet there's nothing on there that supports us being included. So, and then when you see the emerging, those are probably our programs. Our efforts, but your proposal doesn't include the Central Coast. It makes it look like everything goes to LA, which is already what happened.
And also, it looks like you're defining the Central Coast person. You're defining farm, small and medium-sized farm strictly by acreage. So in our county, San Luis Obispo, we have a vast number of very large ranch operations, which are going to skew your findings about our farm size by magnitudes.
And the
Yes.
last thing.
I'm really glad for that disclaimer there.
Sorry, you did a little wander there for us.
Last but not least, when you showed the transportation routes, you didn't show anything going east-west from the Central Valley to the coast.
So that's
You
actually
didn't
very
show any highway connections.
no. So So I think that those were done by traffic volume. The major freeways. It's a shapefile. So I think that that's why that didn't come up. But I really enjoy these discussions actually, because especially when you get a group of people like yourselves that are very rooted in all of these things. I think that it's actually great for the discussion because this was, as I said, just a really preliminary starting point, and actually ended up, even though it seems somewhat simple, it actually ended up being fairly complicated. So I think it just kind of shows how complex these issues really are in terms of targeting resources and things like that. I know previously somebody had brought up that there's also noted, this is using USDA data, but this isn't even distinguishing whether or not these are all food crops. So there's a lot of problems in the back.
I wish there was a way to map passion. I'm serious. It's great to say that that there ought to be a hub here, or there's somebody. But the truth is that there's these hubs are going to occur where there's somebody who's got this big passion to make it happen, and has the drive and energy to drive it, to make it happen, drive it forward.
And I think that that's also really interesting, like sort of taking that and looking at sort of these existing and emerging hubs that are plotted, because I think that that's actually sort of what that indicates, not only that there's resources, but that there's someone on the ground there that has the passion that is trying to make something happen. And I think that that's, although this is showing that there's some major agricultural regions that we're missing, I think that that's equally important. So
Make those an orange dot.
yeah. Like a big pink dot.
What was the year? I mean, because things are changing very, very fast. So what was the time period you were looking at when you were?
It's in the citation of the report, but the data that I got. When was the last ag census?
2007.
Okay, I think it's probably 2007. 2007.
Is this available on the internet, this PowerPoint study?
The PowerPoint isn't, but the mapping study is included in the vision paper, which is available on Louise's website and my website.
But this is not available?
Not yet. I just put it together. So, just moving on really quickly from mapping, we can definitely get back to this if we have time later in the day. But I just wanted to go over very quickly our proposed implementation plan that we came up with. And this is just kind of an overview of the suggested steps that we had for really seeing this network come to fruition. So first on the list, and this is also taken from our group's discussions as well as feedback from the previous event that we had in August. So establishing regular meetings, hopefully we're on track with that. Forming a regional food hub network advisory board. It doesn't have to be, advisory board was just a term that we're using. Basically what we're looking at here is trying to determine a group that would oversee and guide the feasibility and planning stages of the network until it forms its own entity. So whatever that is, that would consist of potential regional food hub members as well as other advocates and interested people that want to see that happen and are willing to try to move it forward. And so now you see this group is kind of taking responsibility for the next steps. Establishing the network's mission, values, and goals. So really hashing those out. Securing initial funding. Developing feasibility study and business plan. Formalizing the organization. And then at this point the advisory board would be out, and now we're on to the network staff and a board of directors. Securing implementation funds. Launching a marketing campaign. Continuing research and information sharing. And then continuing capacity development and outreach. And that's it. Thanks, everyone.